¡Canelo! ¡Dale la pelea a Golovkin! ¡A Golovkin! ¡Dale la pelea a Golovkin, güey! ¿Quién lo dijo, Golovkin? ¡Dale la pelea a Golovkin, güey! ¡No seas miedoso! ¡Golovkin! ¡No! ¡Oscar de la Hoya, dale a Golovkin! ¡Ya me vi! ¡Ya me... ¡Ya me escuchaste, Oscar! ¡A Golovkin! ¡Le sacas a Golovkin, Oscar! ¡Culón! ¡Golovkin! ¡Dale la pelea a Golovkin, güey! ¡Le sacas! ¡Le sacas a Golovkin!
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. And I was born ready. So let's get into it. You guys just seen the clip. Now, Canelo Alvarez, his brother Ramon Alvarez, just faced Antonio Margarito in Mexico. The clip you just seen at the beginning was Canelo in attendance in Mexico, and he was being heckled by a boxing fan who was yelling out things like, "Fight Golovkin! Fight Golovkin! Oscar! De La Hoya, I know you hear me! Fight Golovkin!" He's like, "De La Hoya fought Bernard Hopkins, fight Golovkin." And you can hear the passion, you can hear where he's coming from. And I'm gonna break it down. It's because this to me is a microcosm of how boxing fans feel. Obviously, I can't speak for every boxing fan. I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I do have a channel and multi-platforms with a good following on my Instagram and then also YouTube and whatnot. So I read and see all these comments, and it's easy to, it's like collecting data. You know what I'm saying? If I had like a small channel with lesser subs and stuff like that, and I didn't have the Instagram page, then I wouldn't see all these comments, and then I wouldn't really have the data to process. But I feel I have a good indication of how a lot of people feel based on the successful brands that the Boxing Ego brand has made. So when I say this really reminds me of kind of what I was saying all along with the Canelo situation. I think the Golovkin fight is a massive fight. That's the type of fight where you cannot really come up with an excuse why it shouldn't happen. You can't say, oh, Golovkin, he doesn't do any numbers, because his numbers are good. You know what I mean? He's doing 1 million plus on HBO, regular HBO. They tried him out on pay-per-view. That wasn't that successful, but he dominated in that fight versus David Lemieux. He is selling out on coast to coast, right? The West Coast, the East Coast. Now in the UK, they sold out in record time. And it looks like there's a desire for UK fans to want to see him too. So he's clearly marketable. So you can't say it doesn't make business sense. The only thing you can say is he hasn't fought nobody, right? His resume needs work, but he's trying to fight you. And that's kind of what Paulie Malignaggi says. You said you can't, and I'll try to insert the clip, but Paulie Malignaggi was basically saying you can't condemn a guy saying who's he beat, he ain't fought nobody, when he's trying to fight you and you don't want to fight him. So, I mean, that also makes sense from that perspective. But that's the reason for the criticism that I've seen from Canelo. And that's how I am as a boxing reporter. I started off as a boxing fan, right? I respect the sport and the history of the sport, so I try to give people a fair shake. That's why you see when my predictions, if it's a good Victor Postol versus Crawford fight, you don't really see me going way off. Oh, Crawford's gonna knock him out in the first round, Postol's gonna destroy him. That's one of my favorites, that destroy shit in boxing. Everybody's getting destroyed, right? So Canelo does good, like when he stepped up and had a step up in class against Austin Trout, a slickster type southpaw. At that time, that was good for his career. There wasn't a faded Baldomir or a faded Mosley or anything like that. That was a in prime guy who would beat Miguel Cotto in Austin Trout. So I gave Canelo props for that. But some people want they want this cookie cutter type of reporting style, I guess, where if no matter what Canelo does, or the fighter you like, no matter what he does, you want me to always praise him or always like hold back and not have any criticism. That's not how I work, and it's never gonna change. You know what I'm saying? People can get mad or whatever the situation. If you do something that I believe is praiseworthy, I'll tell you that and I'll explain why. If you do something that I feel warrants criticism, like vacating your belt after you say, put the gloves on right now, we can go at it again and all this, and we Mexican, we don't fuck around, or whatever you said, then I'll tell you why you're getting criticism, why I feel you're getting criticism, or at least from me, and I'll explain why. That's how that works. So that's the situation with Canelo. You've seen the heckler. Now, the thing is the location. That's in Mexico. That's him going as a family member and a fan of his brother, and he's being heckled with Golovkin references, right? And this is not the first time. I covered Gennady Golovkin versus Dominic Wade right after the weigh-in. Golovkin was merely signing autographs for family members and kids and stuff like that. So there's this assembly line. Out of nowhere, this Mexican guy, and he told me later because I talked to him, he was Mexican, and I have it on tape. I'll try to add it in this video if I can. And out of nowhere, he just yells out, "Canelo's scared. He's scared of you, Golovkin." So that's in California. You know what I mean? So that's the pattern. And I think the way De La Hoya and Golden Boy are choosing to manage Canelo's career is putting a lot of pressure on him, right? You fought Amir Khan, a welterweight who had been knocked out in multiple divisions, 35 and 40 if I'm not mistaken, Bradis Prescott and Danny Garcia. Then you choose to bring him up. Now you're fighting Liam Smith, who maybe can pose some problems or be a tougher fight than people would expect, but that's not the fight that people wanted. There's a lot of guys you could pick and maybe underestimate, and it turns out to be a solid fight or whatever based on your flaws, but that still shouldn't have been the guy you chose to pick on, right? And that's why it's making it harder and harder. And this is just coming from, I've actually spoke to people, descendants of Mexico, like actual Mexican fans and stuff who are from Mexico, and some of them have elaborated, so I can't speak for a whole ethnicity, but this is my personal thoughts based on what I've heard people say. And when it comes to, you look at like Oscar De La Hoya, we'll start with him. Oscar De La Hoya, Mexican American, he represented the United States of America and won a gold medal, right? A lot of people, that, from what I've heard, they viewed Oscar De La Hoya as not kind of like a Chicano. A lot of people even call him, there's a Spanish word, it's called pocho, which is kind of like a Mexican that doesn't necessarily speak Spanish, or whitewashed. That's the best way to put it, like whitewashed, like someone who doesn't really act like they believe, like maybe some of the stereotypical things of their culture or whatever. So that's what I heard about like Oscar De La Hoya. Now, of course, he spoke Spanish, but sometimes people aren't received the same. Like Danny Garcia, he's Puerto Rican, but if you go to Puerto Rico, they're probably celebrating the Felix Tito Trinidad, also the guys like Miguel Cotto and Felix Verdejo more than Danny Garcia. They're not really claiming him because they claim that, you know what I mean, they look at Danny as like Americanized, like a, you don't speak Spanish. That's what I'm kind of, I don't know if you guys understand what I'm trying to say, but that's what I heard about Oscar De La Hoya. Plus he was like singing and doing music videos and stuff, so a lot of people, they didn't look at that. Now the same goes for Canelo. I've talked to a lot of fans, and a lot of people, like even some of my fans from Mexico, they say, "Oh, cheers from Mexico," and then they'll tell me their opinions about Canelo. A lot of people that I've seen leave comments like, Canelo has been spoon-fed and he's not really like that in Mexico. A lot of people aren't really checking for Canelo because it all has something to do with I guess what you resonate with and the relatability of a person, you know what I mean? Like Muhammad Ali, you look at him, he kind of transcends all boundaries, but even like, let's say in the black community, a lot of people looked up to him. He's brash, he trash talks, he was at the cool spots with Elvis and the Beatles. He would speak his mind, he would stand for something, he was cocky, and he was, you know what I'm saying? He had a lot of kind of just, he cared about his people, you know what I'm saying? He cared about the African American like cause. He cared about the African American experience in America, the injustices, things like that. Same thing with Tupac. That's why a lot of black people resonate with those type of people, because they feel the struggle, they know the pain of Tupac's lyrics and what he's talking about and stuff like that. But from what I hear, when it comes to Canelo, a lot of people look at him as like, oh, you've been spoon-fed, you've been given this life based on how you look. Because it's kind of funny to me. You look at Oscar De La Hoya, he's a Mexican American, Spanish speaking, and some people didn't embrace him fully. You know what I mean? Like, and this is the difference. If De La Hoya was fighting somebody like Tito Trinidad, then yeah, I'm sure people would ride with him, because that's kind of like Mexico versus Puerto Rico. But if it was like Fernando Vargas versus Oscar De La Hoya, that's when you would see more of a split, because Vargas was considered to be like, you know what I mean, a real dude from, I think he's from Oxnard, so kind of from the hood, and he worked for everything. He's not really being afforded a lifestyle, and I think that's kind of what it is with Canelo. A lot of people look at Canelo as like, he's like a spoon-fed, like, you know what I mean, Golden Boy takes care of him, and because of his looks, his fair skin and his red hair, you know what I mean, you look at Canelo, you wouldn't necessarily know that he is non-English speaking, you know what I mean. I've seen pictures of him in the UK, and then people, it was for the Amir Khan press tour, and they were saying, oh, he looks like he's from London, he looks Irish, and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's no mystery, we know what Canelo looks like, and the ladies like him and stuff. And I think there's a lot of people who just tend to feel that Canelo has been given certain positions, like a Mayweather fight, things like that, based on his marketability in the States, and not necessarily what he's proven. That's why you notice that a lot of people that I've talked to, they resonate more with Julio Cesar Chavez, Salvador Sanchez, Juan Manuel Marquez, Eric Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera, you know what I mean, those kind of guys, because those are the guys who kind of came from really nothing, you know what I mean, the Ramonza gym like Marquez, or Tijuana, and like, that's why the Eric Morales versus Barrera fight are classic, you know what I mean, because it was like the fans got split down the middle, like, you know what I mean, you rep in Mexico City, you rep in Tijuana, and the fans are really split because they really fuck with both of those fighters and liked them a lot. But I don't know if the experience is the same with Canelo. So what I'm getting at is, I think that's why Canelo gets even more pressure, because not only is he making decisions that don't look good, like the vacating of the belt, Golovkin's calling you out, hey, no, give me my belt, Canelo, and he's doing all this, and you just say okay and give him his belt for whatever reason. You're doing that, and then on top of that, some people think you've been like gifted a silver spoon. So I don't know how well that sits, you know what I mean? And like it or not, Canelo is in this position. Like, I like Canelo, you know what I mean, I like the way he fights, but he's in this position, whether you like it or not, whether you hate him or whatever the situation is. So you're in that limelight, and you're going to get a lot more exposure than Johnny Gonzalez. And here's a funny story, and I'm not trying to put him on blast, but Johnny Gonzalez follows me on Instagram, and it's funny because I would post little memes occasionally about Canelo, like I do with anybody else, and he would always like him. And that kind of further, to me at least, kind of further proves what I'm saying. I don't think guys like Johnny Gonzalez, they look at Canelo and Chavez Jr. and guys like that kind of like spoiled brats in a way, you know what I mean? Like, they're, man, you just doing this because your dad, Chavez Sr., you know what I mean? That's why you're getting these big fights and on HBO main events. And there probably is a level of resentment from other guys who came from the bottom, and they're working hard, and they're not given the same paychecks, they're not given the same exposure. They have to really work in the gym, and Unimas and Telemundo their way up to an HBO. Maybe, you know what I mean, if they can get past ESPN and keep winning, maybe get on HBO as a co-main event. So I think that's kind of what it is. But you can tell what the public feels about you at most times, right? The public's pretty vocal, especially with the internet, things of that sort. So when it comes to the Canelo situation, I just think he's better off just fighting Golovkin. Like, it would have been better if he fight. Like, it's not like an Andre Ward Kovalev situation where people didn't really care as much. I mean, despite what they said, Isaac Chilemba and Alexander Brand, because we knew that if they were both victorious, which they should be against those guys, that the main course would be them fighting each other, Ward Kovalev, you know what I mean? But that's not what we're getting with Golden Boy in the Canelo Triple G situation. We don't really know, because every time we think we know, they push it back. December 2015, they had that meeting with the WBC, both camps, and they said, hey, after one voluntary defense, we want you next, right? And Khan was knocked out by Canelo, and then you had Golovkin who knocked out Wade. And Golovkin, after his fight, because I was there, I covered it, after he knocked out Wade, he starts saying, "Oh, Canelo, give me my belts. No, I'm ready now." And he, you know what I mean, he's going off and the crowd's going wild. And the next fight was Canelo Khan, and we were expecting to see maybe post-fight, and Golovkin was in attendance at that fight. We were expecting to see like, oh, okay, this is where it's really gonna erupt. And then Canelo fired back like, "Oh, we Mexican, we don't fuck around," or however that translated to, because some people said that was a loose translation, whatever. But we get the gist of what he was saying. And then all of a sudden, a week and a half later, or whatnot, he vacates his belt. Like, "Oh, I'm not gonna be held to any artificial deadlines." That's not gonna make anybody look good. Point blank, period. Right? So it's kind of hard if we had something in stone, like, hey, if I get past Liam Smith, who I'm dropping down an extra pound to fight, instead of going in the other direction and acclimating to middleweight, right? Then I'm gonna fight Billy Joe Saunders, and if I get past that, I'll fight Golovkin in May. We don't know. They're saying, hey, maybe in September. I mean, even to this point, they said that maybe a month ago. That's still over a year from now. So they're buying a lot of time, and we don't know, and we have to just allegedly wait until September, and it could be some more BS. So I think that's the big reason why you're getting fans like the one that was heckling him. And it's just what it is. Some people might try to discount that, like, oh, that's one guy, he was just drunk. But you know what they say? They say alcohol is a truth serum. You know what I mean? And they say alcohol, a drunk man speaks a sober man's mind. You know what I mean? So I think there was a lot of truth in that. The guy, I mean, you hear in his voice, the passion, fight Golovkin. Like, I mean, he act like he wanted to fight Canelo. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, I mean, I feel he was, even if he was belligerent or drunk, I feel like he was passionate about it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. People want to see the fight. It's a good fight, makes business sense, scrap. And we just don't have any kind of indication of when or if that will ever happen. And that's what's making it look bad for Canelo. And now the last thing I want to talk about is, since this all happened at Canelo Alvarez's brother, Ramon Alvarez, versus Antonio Margarito. Yes, I seen the fight. I actually watched it late. But the rumor is that Margarito wants to fight Canelo in December. And based on what Golden Boy's provided for us lately, and based on Billy Joe Saunders and his demands, and want a couple things me way, want over here, like all this extra stuff. I don't know how easy Billy Joe Saunders is to deal with, because I don't think he's fought in the States. He's had the opportunity to fight on Canelo Liam Smith undercard against Canelo versus another British fighter, Liam Smith, and the Dallas Cowboys Stadium in America, and that holds 80 to 90,000 fans, right? So he could have fought Gabe Rosado there, and he chooses not to, stating that Gabe Rosado does, quote unquote, nothing for him. So if you really want to break it to the US market, what better way to do that than be on boxing's biggest star that's active, not named Mayweather, in front of 80 to 90,000 people potentially, you know what I mean, fighting Rosado. If that's an easy fight, then, you know what I mean, just take it. You have your American debut, and then they're saying the winner of Rosado versus Billy Joe Saunders would most likely get Canelo or be a front runner. So to me, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know how easy Billy Joe Saunders is to work with. That being said, that means Antonio Margarito, who's expressed an interest, he doesn't have any kind of promotional ties that I know of that would prohibit him from being able to work with Golden Boy or for that fight being made. I personally don't want to see that. I mean, it looks like Margarito's damn eye is about to roll out like on the floor. You know what I'm saying? His eye looks bad. Even after the Ramon Alvarez fight, his eye looked really bad, swollen in just pictures. It does not look the same since the Pacquiao/Cotto 2 massacre. And I don't think it's safe for him to be fighting. This fight was in Mexico. I don't know if he can even get cleared to fight medically in the States. I don't know. Because guys like Edwin Valero, he had an accident and he had to go do the same thing where he had to fight outside of the US in order to get fights. To me, it doesn't look like Margarito's the same fighter. He got knocked down by Jorge Paez Jr., who got knocked out a year prior by Jose Benavidez, I want to say at 140. Then he moved up, fought Margarito, and knocked Margarito down, even though he lost that fight, right? Margarito was getting hit with some big shots by Ramon Alvarez. I believe Canelo is clearly better, the best of his brothers. You know what I mean? He's better than Rigoberto, who lost to Austin Trout, and he's better than Ramon Alvarez, right? And I'm not trying to clown. I mean, that's just what it is. Canelo's clearly the best in the family that I've seen. And he has heavier hands. Maybe if it was prime Margarito when he was fighting Paul Williams around that time, then I would like to see it. But ever since the the hand wrapping scandal and the eye situation, Margarito does not look like the same fighter. So I hope they don't make that. That's the whole point. In conclusion, I hope Canelo is not really like, you know what I mean, they might try to sell it like some Jean-Claude Van Damme kickboxer, like, oh, like this, like, you know what I mean, and like avenge his brother who lost type of stuff, because Austin Trout, like I said, beat his brother Rigoberto, and he was in attendance for that. And then when they finally fought Canelo and Trout, that was kind of the backstory that they gave and incited on the Showtime All Access or whatever show that they had to build up the fight. They were like, oh, he beat his brother and Canelo witnessed it. So I hope they don't try to use that as like a backstory and a selling point for Margarito versus Canelo. So I want to cover all my bases. That's why I believe Canelo is getting so much pressure, because like it or not, he is one of the faces of boxing, and he's a face of Mexico. That's his country, that's where he's from, and him not fighting Golovkin adds a lot of pressure. So it's just funny to me because I say the same thing, like, and I'm not even as belligerent as the guy in the video at the beginning, and it's because I'm racist, it's because I hate Canelo, it's because of this and that. But real recognizes real, skill recognizes skill. At the end of the day, that's why I'm good wherever I go. Every time I go to boxing events and meet people, and I'm taking pictures with people and the kids and stuff, and I have a good time, because at the end of the day, whether you hate it or love it, I'm speaking from the heart. And a lot of times these fans, whether they're biased or whatever, they know what is being said is true. And this avoiding Golovkin for Canelo does not make him good. New media, you can dislike, but you can't disprove. Make sure you like the video, share the video. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.